So like, you know, I guess I'll die then, you know, that's great. That's real great.
I'm helpless when I'm ocean waves.
Hello, welcome to my channel. This week I'm going to be judging King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. Just by the way, this is going to have a spoiler warning for the Grisha trilogy and Six of Crows because this is like the sequel to all of them, so this will have spoilers for both of those. So this book has two point of views. One is from Nikolai and Zoya, who are grappling with Ravka as it's swamped in debt and teetering on the edge of war. Nikolai's demon that the Darkling has planted in him at the end of the Grisha trilogy has woken up and is causing havoc. Nikolai keeps waking up in the middle of the night and trying to kill stuff. You know, it gets in the way of ruling and the demon is getting stronger, so that's a problem. Nina is dealing with the grief left behind from Matthias' death. She has been sent on an undercover mission to Fjerda to recover information, but mostly so she can bury Matthias, she is reluctant to do. On the mission, she discovers a small covenant for the Fjerdan god Djel, where girls seem to be going missing. It's a mystery. So we are going to be jumping into the non-spoiler review of this book. I thought that this book was a pretty good book, in my opinion. It is pretty iconic. Also, there's a map, so I have the poster version. Look at how cool that is! The writing was very vibrant and very easy to follow. It really feels like you're in the book. I did enjoy her writing style a lot. The references to Six of Crows and Grishaverse are so fun, and every time I see one, I'm like... She also does a good job of catching you up with what's been happening for the past few years in this book, because there's kind of in-between time. I really liked the characterizations. The relationships were pretty good most of the time. Get into that later. The dialogue was actually really good. I did enjoy the dialogue and all the banter and stuff. There was both internal and external dialogue, and both of those did so much for just following the story, and it was great. There really wasn't a boring moment in this book. I was never bored. It was great. Enjoyed it. The world building is so incredible. I love the world building in just all of this. The religion is so well thought out, and how it affects the individual, the culture, the country, magic, whatever. It's so interesting. How the cultures class is also really affected, and the languages are so cool. All the names are so awesome. Like, I'm blown away. So you can see the effects the previous books had on the world, like Alina. All of the politics were also so good. They made the story seem more real. It was so interesting to read how they had to like deal with all these different like Kirch and allies and Zemini, whatever. Also the prejudices, particularly toward Grisha and women, were very prevalent, and it was interesting to read how different countries approached the magic Grisha had. I know it was gone over in the previous books, but it was also mentioned in here, and I thought that was pretty cool because not everyone's going to respond to the magic in the same way. And the characters were also so good. I don't know if it's because I've been reading really crappy books recently, but they were so good. They each clearly had their own voice, and they were all so well fleshed out, and it was so great. Yeah, I might have cried like a billion times during this book, and that's okay. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. Some of the relationships were kind of iffy, some of the point of views were kind of iffy, so we'll get into that later. We will now be jumping into the spoiler section of this video, so if you don't want spoilers, or if you're planning on reading this book, which I highly recommend, it's great, then click away now. So we open with Dima's chapter, which is like the prologue, and it was so vivid and so cool and well thought out. We get to see how Nikolai and the government and all of that affects everyday people, which was super cool. How Dima was affected by his family was also cool, and oh my goodness. At the very end, when it's like, watch your head, your highness, I was like... And that's the whole book. I thought that was such a cool beginning to have, because it really does set the scene. And then we get to see Nikolai and Zoya going in the coach, and oh my goodness, we get so much information in this chapter. It does a perfect job of conveying to us what Nikolai and Zoya's relationship is at this point. She knows he would hate sympathy, so she keeps her tone indifferent. She takes like none of his crap but still respects him, and he respects her like so much, and I am so here for it. I love their relationship. We also learned about several different miracles that have been popping up, like this bone bridge and these crazy stuff. Awesome, right? So religion's role in this book is so well done and so fun. I'm not gonna get over that. So this is a side note. I love how unapologetically Zoya is. Like, she's not gonna change for anyone. She's like, yeah, no, I'm awesome, and you guys all better realize that because I'm great. And I'm like, I love you. And she's such an interesting character too, like with this added like commander position and also her previous relationship with the Darkling. It makes her such a cool character, as well as this new budding relationship, with Nikolai. And I'm like, she's such an interesting person to read. Also, they're like playing this charade because she's like, my late night visits to him because he's got this demon have to be resolved somehow. So I'm just gonna like, we've got to pretend to be lovers. And I'm like, and when Nikolai tensed when the guard was like, does she only play with royals? And Nikolai was like, and I was like. Then we go over to Nina, who is undercover in Fjerda, and I think that this point of view just kind of, it doesn't exactly make sense because it doesn't connect to the main story that's going on, and I didn't really know what it was doing, but it was still fun to read. Like, I still enjoyed it. Like, it didn't really take away from the story, which is why I didn't, like, mark it down a lot, but it was just kind of weird how it didn't align and it didn't connect to the story like Six of Crows did. And so it just kind of, it was like these two separate things that were just happening and you were like, you know? So that was kind of weird, but I still really liked reading this book. In conclusion, Nina is awesome and I love her, but I mean, who doesn't? It's very interesting how you can see the misogyny in Fjerda affects Nina as she goes undercover. She needs to be a widow. She can only work in this crappy fish job because she's a widow, and widows, you know, you don't have a husband, what are you doing here? Also, you can see how Alina affected the world and how she's like a vision of hope to the people, and there's people who reject the religion in Fjerda and go to the saints who represent kind of sympathy to Grisha, so I thought that was a very interesting world building point. Also, the Matthias Nina angst just might actually kill me. I like that voice in her head that she had. It was like heartbreaking, but like I was like ugly crying. But the thing is, after the burial, he just kind of disappeared. It was kind of like, wait, where'd he go? Of course, Leonie and Adric are perfect for each other. They're wonderful. Love them. So next we're getting into Kirigan's weapon basement, which I think is awesome. I find it hilarious how he is like fallen for Zoya or whatever. Also, how Nikolai's like, most men would do anything to soften her edges and sweeten her disposition. And what was the fun in that? Like, he respects her so much. And I'm like, wow, an unproblematic YA ship. We could never. Also, all the little references to foxes made me go, ooh. All the references to the other books made me so happy. I was just like, oh, my heart is filled. And seeing how Nikolai's mind worked was so cool. And he was like, yeah, we are gonna blow up our submarines. And I was like, what? It always keeps you on edge, and I really liked that. And you can also see how he's not perfect, because I feel like in previous books he's been like this perfect, wow, he's amazing, which, you know, whatever, he is kind of great. Now we get to see him use humor to kind of cover his pain, and he's like, you know, not doing so great. And it's very interesting to read. And then I'm like, Nikolai. You know, we also get to see how the Kirch want it, and the Zemini were like, no, but then we're not gonna be allies, so like, gotta choose, man. And just like all of the politics that go into this made it so fun to read. And yeah, that was probably one of my favorite parts about this book. So we also meet Hannah in the scene, who I think by herself is a great character. I think she's very similar to Matthias, and I feel like that wasn't used as much as it should have been. Their relationship was kind of just sudden, and it was like kind of like, no, there we go. After she buries him, he's not mentioned at all. And I know that that is a grief thing, but like, he doesn't just disappear. And especially since Hannah and Matthias are so similar, I feel like gives you perfect opportunity to draw those things in her head and be like, my gosh, she's so similar to Matthias, and be like kind of like angst about that. Slowly grow to love Hannah for Hannah, because Hannah's not exactly like Matthias. So I thought that was kind of weak. Their relationship was kind of on the weak side, but like I still enjoyed the book. It is also so cool how you see cultures impact everyone. Hannah is very like kind of a tomboy, and the Fjerdan perfect woman is like very docile, very complacent, and it's very interesting to see how not everyone fits that. I also love the twist where Nina finds out there's like hundreds of graves on the mountain. You can just feel your stomach drop, and I thought that was really well written. Also, the metaphor of the drowning man being Ravka is just so good. Because you don't know if it's Nikolai who's the drowning man or Ravka who's the drowning man, and it's like, I see what you did there. He said he swore no woman had ever looked better in blue, and I am sobbing. He freaking says this. He's picking out a bride with Zoya, because Zoya's like, you need to pick out a bride so that we have stability in our kingdom. And he's like, wow, she's so pretty right now. They plan a huge party with a bunch of important people to help Nikolai choose a bride, you know, and he is not into it because he's totally into Zoya, but like, he doesn't like let himself like feel for her, and she doesn't let herself because like, you know, that situation, and just like the angst. Oh, the angst. Oh, it's so good. Then he reveals to her that he's actually illegitimate, like an illegitimate king, and shows Zoya a picture of his actual father, which she like immediately throws into the fire. And I think she realizes that the only other person that he revealed this fact to got proposed to, and she like got scared because she's like, and she knows a romance that between them can't go anywhere. So she's like, just stop it now. And I was like, because like she threw it in the fire, and I was like, oh. You know? So now we go back to Nina, and this is the scene where she buries Matthias, and I was like, so I will jump off a cliff now, but that's okay. I love how even the smaller romances, like Genya and David and Tamar and Nadia, are so well fleshed out. They're not the main ships, I guess, but they're still so fun to read, and I'm like, oh, that's cute. And we head back to Zoya and Nikolai, who are leaving for a 3-week-long tour of like the miracle sites to see if they can find a cure for Nikolai's demon. Here we get a couple of diplomatic scenes where he's like kind of working out the details. I'm definitely glad she didn't drag out those, because that could have gotten boring very quick, but I like the little short, like, so we get like that political like taste, I guess, without it being like, oh my gosh. The whole backstory about Nikolai and Dominic was so perfect and genuinely amazing. It was so cool to see how he got to be like this cool, awesome ruler. And it's like, well, he also went through a lot of stuff to be like that. I could read just a whole book of Nikolai's backstory. So here we get a new perspective named Isaac. And he's tailored to look like Nikolai as a part of like this predetermined plan in case something happened to Nikolai, so that the Ravka doesn't go into turmoil and stuff. And I thought that was super cool. I thought that was a fun point. Isaac is so not like Nikolai, and he's so nice and just kind of trying to do his best. Very quiet, you know, and I'm like, I love you. And we get to learn a lot about his childhood and family and a bunch of things about him. So he has depth, and I really enjoy how that depth is inserted into the book. So then we head back to Nikolai. We learn that this is like a purgatory that the saints have been put in, and Zoya is still kind of in shambles after her amplifier broke, and Nikolai's like wondering why. And he's also such an interesting point that the stories of the saints got told and retold so much that their stories got lost in all of the retellings. It makes sense too. It's not going to be exactly like the stories. It also makes sense that they were the first Grisha. It goes with what Nina was saying about how, like, if you want to find Grisha, follow the miracles. That's how people explain the magic, and I thought that was a very interesting point. Juris comes to Zoya and begins to train her. Zoya sees this Kalish crest. It's supposed to be Juris's old crest or whatever, and it mentions that she doesn't know the iconography well enough to know where he's born, and this just is a glimpse into how deep the world building is and how cool that is. So back with Isaac, he's still struggling. He keeps finding things that Nikolai made in his pockets, like notes and sketches, and he finds this little wire fashioned shape of like a ship. And I thought that was so cute, because like Nikolai is the type of person who would just always be doing something with his hands. Yeah, so Zoya goes to Juris, and he's like, you should be able to use fire and water under your command, and you're just like not letting something go. So, you know, it's confirmed Zoya is the last airbender. She goes with him to Nova Kiribis, where she unearths old memories, and we get a lot of backstory on her, which I thought was so cool. We get to learn how she got to be to the little palace, and we get to also learn how it was socially acceptable to marry kids off when they were 9, because we're seeing it from her eyes. And so she tells him about how she got her amplifier that is broken, which I thought was also very interesting. Just adds another like layer of depth to her character, because she's the one who's very hardcore and like tough on the outside. She let those cups go because she felt bad for them, and she protected them with her life. It was a very good character moment. We get news that Fjerda is planning on marching on Ravka under the flag of a Landslav pretender, which I thought was also an interesting point, that there are Landslav pretenders. Nina also mentions an assassination plot against the king that is played out later with Isaac, and it was just kind of like, yeah, you really needed a connection, and that's the little hint, I guess, why they're not connected at all. It's very weird. So they defeat her, and the thing is over, but the monster's still freaking in Nikolai. I'm so mad. And so then they reveal the soul of the Darkling has embedded himself into Yuri's body. Oh no. We clearly have a setup for the next novel. The villain could be determined as Elizabeta, which possibly, yeah. But I think the main villain in this is actually Ravka. A lot of books in YA are like good versus evil. What happens after the good and evil? What happens after good has triumphed? It doesn't go to perfect immediately. I gave this 4.5 out of stars.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows, only time.
Because Hannah and Nina were just kind of like instant. Wow, she's got some cool chestnut hair. Kind of into that. Wow, look at her. She's kind of looking awesome riding on a horse. I'm betting in future books their relationship will be built up. The main thing with that is just that Matthias isn't mentioned at all after the burial, like at all. Where'd he go? Like, you don't just forget about that. The two point of views just didn't connect at all. It would have been better to have them connected at least. Right now they're two completely different stuff in just happens to be in one book. What's the correlation, you know? I still really enjoyed this book, so I would still recommend you reading it. So that is my book review on this thing. Sorry this video got out so late. I'm kind of an idiot. Please take that survey in the Shatter Me video and also the Cellar video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Bye. You know. Oh boy.